Hey everyone, this is Brian from ActiveMelody.com. In this week's guitar lesson, we're going to take a look at this up-tempo, funky blues that's played in the key of G. And we're going to be looking at the call and response technique, where we've got a constant call that happens over and over again, but the response is different each time. And the response is really your chance to improvise. And so my goal in this lesson is to help unlock the neck. We're going to be taking a look at how you can play different chord voicings up the neck, and then how you can play scales around those chords. And you can see that improvising over something like this is not that difficult, and it's a lot of fun to do. So we'll break this down over two videos. In this video, we're going to take a look at the first half. If you'd like to watch the second half, as well as download the tablature and have access to the on-screen tab viewer, and download the MP3 jam track that you can practice with and get your timing and your tempo, then you're going to want to go to ActiveMelody.com and look for EP147. That's a lesson number for this lesson. So let's go ahead and get started with part one. Alright, real quick on tone settings. I'm going out of the guitar into the TS-808 pedal, which is made by Ibanez. It's a tube screamer pedal. I use this pedal all the time. It's a great overdrive pedal. It's pretty basic. There's 3 knobs on it, and I have them all set at 50%. So that's the overdrive, level, and tone. And that's really the only overdrive I'm using. I have a little bit of delay. You can hear that slapback delay, and that just gives you kind of an echo, kind of a vintage sound. Now for that, you could use any delay pedal if you wanted that sound. I'm using a Strymon timeline pedal, but you could use a TC electronic flashback or whatever you've got. It just kind of colors the sound. I always like a little bit of echo when I play. I also like always have a little bit of reverb on the amp, and so that's the only other tone setting I would go through today, and that's going out of the timeline into the amp, and I have the tone, or the reverb, sorry, at about 40%. So those are the settings. The guitar, Fender Stratocaster, I'm on the middle pickup, and I have the tone at about 50%. The volume is paired back to about 70 to 80%. I always keep the volume, always back off a little bit. You don't want to, especially if you're playing live, you don't want to play just flat out on your guitar with the volume. I always like to have a little bit of room to grow if you need an extra punch. It gives you a kind of or for me anyway, it's like a little safety net, a little comfort. Okay, so let's talk about the song. So the song is in the key of G. So any of your lead stuff is going to kind of play off that G chord. Now we're gonna, as we get into kind of some of the structure of this thing, you're gonna find that I'm switching scales to match the chord. Now that's not something you have to do, not something I always do, but I think it colors the song and makes it sound a little more sophisticated when you do that. And I think it's a good technique to learn, so you're definitely going to want to pay attention for that. That'll be in the part 2 video. But in this video, we're going to start with that first half, which is that really cool, little funky, bluesy rhythm thing. And I don't know where I got this. It's kind of got a Stax record feel. I was kind of playing around with it on the piano. Actually, it started on the piano. And so even though the song is in the key of G, the first chord we're going to play is an F. So we're going to go from an F to an F sharp up to a G. And those are all just major chords. And let's get into that. So let's start with that F. Now the way I'm making the F is I'm just playing the top 3 notes out of an F chord. So if you think of a proper F chord down in first position where you're playing all 6 strings, it would look like that. You just do a major bar chord there. Now you don't need all of that. All you're really doing is just playing this. So I'm barring the first 2 strings here on the 1st fret, and I've got my middle finger on the 2nd fret, 3rd string. And when I play that, I build it. The first thing I do is I build that chord, and you hear that done a lot, especially in blues or funk, where you don't just start straight on the chord. You kind of build it. Now it happens quickly, so but that's what gives it a little bit of that unique flavor. And so to do that, I guess just go ahead and bar the first 3 strings there on the 1st fret, so that you can get that note, and then hammer on. So that would be hammering on the 3rd string from the 1st fret to the 2nd fret. Very easy to do. And that's how you're going to want to practice that. Just grabbing those top 3 strings. Now that'll be the challenge for some of you that are newer to playing, is because you're going to be looking down and you're going to be worrying about where your pick is, and you're going to be worrying about bumping other strings. So to start with, set a metronome or whatever you have to do, just to Try and get accurate, and over time it'll become very easy for you, and it doesn't take that long for your pick to fall right there on that third string, so you're not bumping the other strings. And that's just something that over time you get really good at. So that's the first thing. It's a downstroke. And then I do these muted strums. Sometimes you hear them called ghost strum, and that's what I'm doing is I'm muting the strings with my left hand, and then a little bit of this part of my hand, my right hand, to create that rhythmic quality there. So that's a downstroke, that's a downstroke. Now we're going to do an upstroke on the F sharp. So now that the nice thing about this is you're just taking that same chord shape and we're sliding it up, everything up one fret. So that's going to be an F sharp, and we're going to do that with an upstroke. And again, just try and hit those top three strings. Even if you hit just the top two strings, it'll still work. So you don't have to be super, super accurate on that upstroke. All right, so if we back up, we have the downstroke, we have the muted strum, then we have the upstroke, and then after the upstroke, you have two muted strums. It's going to be a down and upstroke like this. So, and you can see when you're playing this upstroke, immediately you go into the down up muted strum. And again, to get that muted strum, you're just letting your fingers rest on the strings here, so you're not pressing them down, but they stay in position. And then we're going to do another downstroke, and this time we're going to move everything up one more fret, and now we're going to be playing a G chord. Same thing, same chord shape. And that's at least the repetitive part of this. You'll hear that repeated over and over again. Now after I play the G, I'm going to do one more muted strum. It's another downstroke. There it is. Now we're going to play a little lead part. So this goes back into that same, I repeat this over and over again, but that same call and response type thing where that's the call. Now the response is going to be different each time. We're going to make it interesting. So the first one will be very simple. That's it. So when you put those two pieces together, the call and the response, it goes, and you can start to feel it now. It's starting to say something to you. So that response, what we're going to do is just two downstrokes with the right hand. And the first one there is just barring the first three strings on the 5th fret, and I use my ring finger for that. And then we're going to bar the first three strings on the 3rd fret. And when we do play that downstroke, we're going to hammer on, just like we did with the F down here. We're going to hammer on with our middle finger. This time you're going to be hammering onto the 4th fret, 3rd string. And it'll be coming from the 3rd fret. So it sounds like that. So let's put it together. Let's back up. We have. And after that, I did one more little pop just to give it a, kind of like you're keeping a tempo there with your hand. Now you've got a part. You've got a call and a response. Now you could just take just that, and you could spend a lot of time setting a metronome. If you're a premium member, you can download the jam track, and this is where those jam tracks become very valuable because it keeps you on tempo to play along with the band. But just try that. You could just kind of repeat that over and over again over the G part of the song. Okay, so that's the setup. Now we're going to repeat that. Now we're going to go back and play the same little call part again. Now this time the response is going to be different. It's going to be a lead part that goes. And notice what I'm doing here. As I mentioned, we're in the key of G. Even though we start on an F, we're building up to a G. We're walking up to that G. So if now that you know the key that we're in, and we're playing the G, which would be the 1 chord in a typical blues, that means that we could play any lead stuff that we want in the key of G, and it's going to work. You could either play, since this has got kind of a happy major sounding blues, you could play either minor pentatonic, like I just did, or you could play major pentatonic, or you could go, you know, into something else even if you wanted, like another mode. But that would be, I always limit my, at least the way I think of it, just to keep it simple, I always limit it to either the minor or major. It's either going to be kind of happy or it's going to be sad. So the reason I'm telling you that is now that you've got the setup, you can improvise this thing. So let me show you this part, and then I'll explain how you can improvise it. So minor pentatonic scale pattern 1, that's where we are. Looks like this. Remember, the 3rd fret is our root fret, because when we make our G chord, that's where home base is. So that's where we are. So when I went, I just walked right down the pattern 1 minor pentatonic scale. Starting on the 3rd fret 1st string, you go down to the 6th fret 2nd string, 3rd fret 2nd string. Now we're going to go 5th fret 3rd string, and there's the 3rd fret 3rd string. So we have, and that's easy for you to think about because it's just literally walking down the scale. You're not doing anything out of order. But it works really well, I thought. Alright, so as for improvising, what we've just learned are 3 different response parts. The call remains the same each time. The call's, but you know, that first response went like that, very easy. The second response, the one we just learned, was like that. Now the third one we're going to learn goes, you know, it's just kind of a fun little funky thing to do with the 7th chord. But you can, where you can really take your playing to the next level is, now that you know kind of the setup, you know what the call is, you know the key we're in, see what you can do, even if you just play in pattern 1 of the minor pentatonic scale, see what you can do to improvise that. So even if you did something like, so you can see what I'm doing there as I went to the major pentatonic scale. You know, just kind of playing around gives it a little more of a happy feel. But you could do this endlessly. You could even go high up on the neck or wherever you want to go. So just think about that. All right, let's back up. We'll start from the beginning. We have, now this third one goes, and what I'm doing is I'm playing a G7 chord, but I'm playing it up here. Now, the chord shape that I'm using, the easiest way to think about making this chord, I know a lot of you know how to make a D7 chord down in first position. And I'm using that same chord shape, I'm just playing it up here so that my ring finger and middle finger are both here on the 7th fret, strings 1 and 3. And then my pointer finger goes down on the 6th fret 2nd string. And I'm just playing those top 3 strings. And I'm going to play here, and I'm going to slide down 1 fret this way, and then we're going to slide it back up. So we have, easy to do, but it's a great little, I think it's a great little response. Now another way you might hear that done would be like, you know, something from like the Blues Brothers or something. But just play around with it. It's just sliding that 7th chord back and forth. And then the 4th time through, I just repeated what I did the first time. I guess I wasn't as creative with this one as I probably should have been. Well, I don't want to overwhelm you too. It's like throwing so many things at you. I think sometimes it's comforting. I even find it that way, to repeat something. And even to the listener's ear, it can be nice to go back to something you've already heard. It sort of keeps it grounded in a way. So the 4th time was that little response. Okay, that's the whole G part. Then it goes to the C part of the song, or the 4 chord. And the C chord, what I'm doing is I'm playing a C7. So all you need to do that is just like a C chord down in first position. I know you know how to do that. And then we're going to take our pinky and we're going to push down here on the 3rd fret 4th string. keeping the rest of the C chord shape. That's a C7, very commonly used, especially in blues. It's a great chord because you can play it all over the neck and get different chords just playing those middle 5 strings, middle 4 strings rather. So then when we get to the C part, the strum pattern goes like this. So it's this down, down, up. There's your muted strums, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down. Okay, that's the first part. Now I'm only playing those middle 4 strings there. And then I came up and went and played this little lick here. I'm going to show you where that comes from so you can start to use this when you play. But the way we do it is we bar the first 5 strings on the 5th fret. And we're going to play strings 5 and 4. And we're going to hammer onto the 7th fret on the 5th string. So that's the first thing. Then we're going to go. Now when we do this part, we're playing strings 4 and 3. And we're going to hammer on to the 7th fret 4th string. Actually, you could either play this by playing strings 5 and 4 or just play string 5 to start it. But this one, grab both of those strings, both 4 and 3, and hammer on to the 7th fret 4th string. Now where that is, it's just the C chord. Remember we're playing the C? Well, all I'm doing is I'm just visualizing the chord. Okay, you can play C here, you can play C here. You can play a C like this. This is using that Hendrix Wind Cries Mary thing, which I've mentioned many times. But when you get up into this position, you can play all those little licks like that. You can even keep going. And that just gives you some lead licks to do. And it's easy for me to visualize this, to go from here to where what else could I do and see? Well, I think, okay, you guys see, okay, oh yeah, I got this area to play with. And you can come up with all kinds of little licks right on the fly, and they sound great. And just remember that technique no matter what chord you're playing. So if it's a D chord, you got the same thing. You can make whole songs, whole solos out of that technique. And Hendrix did that quite a bit. That's where he would, you'll hear a lot of his playing come from. Okay. After that, those are just downstrokes, by the way. Down, down, 2 downstrokes. Then I came up and went. Isn't that cool sounding? Very kind of James Browny, you know, I don't know. It's just got a real cool, funky vibe to it. And what I'm doing, it's very easy to do. Another technique that you'll want to put in your back pocket, because you can always, if you like how this sounds, I want you to be able to do that if you're improvising or writing. But I'm just barring the first 3 strings here on the 3rd fret. And we slide up to the 5th fret. It's just a downstroke. So down, up, down. And then we go back down to the 3rd fret. Easy. It's just top 3 strings. You're not doing anything other than creating that little bar. And that's what it sounds like. Just pay attention to where this is, what we just did here. See how it's between these 2 frets? Remember the C chord? Now you can start to visualize, okay, anytime I'm making this chord shape and I want that kind of funky thing going on, I can always do it right around there. You can visualize it. You can see where it is in relation to the chord. Same with the D. And anyway, I know some of you know that, but it's these little tips that make your playing way better. And it's not that difficult. It's really, once you kind of start to visualize the chords on the neck, it unlocks the whole thing. And it just takes some time. But just start with one. Start with this chord shape, you know. See what all you can get out of it. Now I just showed you 2 things. You got that, and all playing off that one chord shape. Okay, so that's the C7. Oh, and then to conclude that, I went little kind of poppy thing where I keep this down. I did this with my pinky, but I came up here to the 5th fret 1st string, played that, and then took my pinky back off. You may want to use your ring finger. But that's what I did. Then then went right back to everything we played at the first half. Exactly. I mean, I didn't change any of it. Right? Exactly the same. Okay, now we're going to get to the D part of the song. And for the D, I took kind of the same concept. So I'm picturing these 3 notes out of the G chord. I'm just going to slide up. I know where the D chord is if I'm making the D bar chord. So I'm just using the same exact principles, just like the G is here. And I'm playing that part out of just those notes out of the chord. I'm going to come up. I'm going to slide everything up to here. So I'm barring the first 2 strings on the 10th fret, and then I've got my middle finger on the 11th fret, 3rd string. And I'm just making the D up here, and that way I can play. And to do that, it's just the down, down, up, and then I barred the first 3 strings on the 12th fret. There's that little hammer on again. Now I didn't start with the hammer on, I started by just sliding up. But then I hammer on, and then I did an upstroke, grabbing that 1 string. Or if you happen to bump the 2nd string, that's okay too. Okay, so that's all I did for the D. Very makes sense because your D chord would be up here, right? Now I did a D7. I came up and played that in kind of the Red House type thing. But that's using the exact same thing we did. Remember when I showed you how to make a G7 like this? So from this chord shape, just pay attention to where these 2 fingers are and where this is in relation to it. That's kind of how I think of it. It starts to make sense. You can visualize the whole chunk, from here all the way up to here. Well, that same thing is happening on the D chord. So when I'm coming up to here, I'm just playing the D7th, but up in this position. And then I just I hit it. I went. So the timing goes da 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 da. And I also gave it some vibrato while I'm playing it. Now that's a little more challenging, maybe for some of you. If you want to see the master at that, Robert Cray, he could play a like 4-note chord and give it this awesome vibrato. But that's the technique there. And that's all spelled out in the tab, by the way. If you're like struggling with wait, is that an upstroke, downstroke? Is that a strum? All the strum notation is done in the tab. Okay, so after we play the D7th part, I played a little lead part here. And what I'm doing is I'm playing in the D minor pentatonic scale because we're over the D part of the song. Now that's probably the most confusing thing to most people when they're trying to play lead. They get so confused, and I know I did too in the beginning, is do you have to change the scale to match the chord because we're over the D chord and you just played a D minor pentatonic scale? Well, you don't have to. That's why it's confusing. You can, and a lot of people argue that you should because it sounds a lot better. But had I just came down and played something in G minor pentatonic scale because we're in the key of G, I could have made it work there too. But since we're up here and we're already in D, I think it sounds way better to go ahead and play a little lead part. And since the D, I've extended it out for 2 measures, the D part, which means you're hanging on it longer than you would in a normal cadence, then it makes sense to me to go ahead and play a lead over that, or in that scale. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a bend. It starts with a full bend here on the 13th fret, 1st string, and you can see where I'm at. I'm just in pattern 1 of the minor pentatonic scale for the key of D, which is, remember your root fret would be here, so it would look like this. So I'm just going to start here with a full bend, 13th fret, 1st string, and then I'm going to release and play the 13th fret without the bend, Now watch this. We're just walking right down pattern 1, so it's 10th fret 1st string, 13th fret 2nd string, 10th fret 2nd string. So now we're going to do a bend and release, and that's on the 12th fret 3rd string. It's a full bend. And then we're going to play the 10th fret 3rd string. So let's try that again. And we're just going to keep walking down. Watch this. Now from here, we're still back and forth between the 12th fret and the 10th fret. So now we're in the 4th string. So 12, 10, and then we're going to go to the 12th fret 5th string. And this time, I'm going to walk it down and add that. Now I know that's not in the minor pentatonic scale, this note, but it is in the blues scale. That's that blue note. And so all that note is just bridging. You have these two notes in the minor pentatonic scale. This is just a little bridge note to kind of get you between one to the other. And it just has a real kind of bluesy feel when you do it. So and then we come down to the 8th fret 5th string, and then we conclude there on the 10th fret 6th string. And that's the timing of it is da 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 da. So, and you know, if you play, I've got the a version of the jam track for premium members that has me playing through it, so you can listen to that. You can also go to the on-screen tab viewer and slow that down if you want to really get the timing counted in, and you can even loop it by just selecting it and just let it loop over and over until you get that. Okay, so after that, to get back, now this is kind of where I'm going to wrap up part 1, and I'll save part 2 for premium members because it gets into more of a lead and a higher registry. But after that lick, I go and played that same little F sharp G, but I'm playing it up here because I'm already up here. So what I did was I started thinking, and this is the way my mind works. As I'm playing the lead, I'm thinking, okay, I know that part's coming up. So where can I play this F chord up high like this? Well, I knew there was an F here. That's just an octave higher than where I was, but that seemed kind of weird. You could have done it that way. But then I remembered, oh yeah, you got your C chord shape. Or really that's your C chord, but using the A chord shape. So you got an F here, right? Well, I don't have to make that whole F. I can just play those 3 notes. It's a little triad right out of that F. So strings 4, 3, and 2, and I'm just barring the first 4 strings there on the 10th fret. So I can play that F sharp, and G. So just remember that if you ever want to get to a G and you're up here in this area, you've got a G chord right there, just barring the first 4 strings there on the 12th fret. Okay, so now we get into, that's where the beginning of part 2 happens. So let's go ahead and back up. We'll go through everything in part 1, and I'll play through it all slowly so you have one more reference of this. And that'll conclude this part 1, and then I'll see you in part 2. So here we go.